At its height, the British Empire controlled nearly a quarter of the world's population and territory, making it the largest empire in history. But it didn't expand through brute force alone. It expanded through pattern. Again and again, the empire relied on a surprisingly consistent formula. The process usually began with arrival, not invasion. British traders, diplomats, or naval officers would arrive claiming peaceful intentions, often framed around trade, protection, or cooperation. They didn't immediately threaten local rulers. Instead, they focused on identifying who held real influence: elders, chiefs, kings, or religious leaders. Those leaders were treated as partners. Next came status and gifts. Local elites were showered with luxury goods, weapons, uniforms, titles, and access to British prestige. Some were even invited to Britain itself, where they were given tours, banquets, and symbols of respect. The message was subtle but powerful. Align with us and you gain status. Resist and you stand alone. When these leaders returned home, many became advocates rather than enemies. They told their people that the British were advanced, organized, and reasonable. Not conquerors, administrators. This endorsement mattered more than soldiers ever could. Once trust and influence were established, the empire moved to formalize control. Treaties were introduced, often written in English and interpreted through British legal frameworks. Legal systems were reshaped, and advisors were placed inside local governments. Often, these agreements transferred real power without looking like conquest. On paper, local rulers still governed. In reality, decisions increasingly required British approval. Then came the final step: infrastructure and dependence. The British built ports, railways, courts, and tax systems. But these systems weren't designed for local autonomy. They were designed to serve imperial trade and administration. Local economies became dependent on British markets. Governments became dependent on British officials. At that point, resistance was no longer political, it was logistical. This formula didn't work everywhere. It failed when societies were unified, industrialized, or unwilling to cooperate. But where local divisions already existed, the strategy was devastatingly effective. The empire didn't just conquer land, it absorbed authority, one agreement at a time. That's how the British Empire grew so large, not just through force, but through influence, incentives, and gradual control. An empire built less like a siege and more like a negotiation that only ever flowed one way.